Welcome to the chess, ladies and gentlemen. Man, I appreciate you guys very much stopping by. So I figured I'd go ahead and grab another one of the games that Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura played with each other. So this is the 11th game that they played in the American Cup, as you guys know. Epic battle it's been. But yes, man, like I said, this is I specifically wanted to get this game because there was another game that I posted and I referenced this game, but I hadn't done it. So I was like, man, why don't I just do it? Cool. So all my people in the Philippines, I will say mabuhay to you. Kumusta na aking magkaibigan. Maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking mga video. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. As always, anybody else from around the world, I appreciate it very much. If you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we got for this game, homie. So we got to move knight to f3. As I say, I mean, this starts off as a ready. You know, it's a very, very solid opening move, but it's kind of like, you know, like a waiting type move. It's not specifically like an opening. It usually transposes into something else, but we got the move d5. We got e3, knight to f6, c4, e6, b3. So you see that Hikaru Nakamura is specifically not making it a d4 opening. Like basically at any point, if he plays d4, then it just transposes into like a normal d4 opening. But we do see bishop to e7, bishop to b2, castles. We got knight to c3. We got the move c5. And, I mean, you don't have to do it immediately, but you do have to, at some point, clarify what's going on in the center of the board. Because if you allow black to get too many moves in, they start pushing d4, and they kind of start knocking you back just a little bit. So you don't want none of that. So we see pawn taking d5, pawn taking d5. So more of what I was talking about. Let's say, for example, like white plays like a3 or some like random type of move. Knight to c6 is going to come. And like I said, pretty much next move, you know, black is ready to start pushing this d4 pawn up and, you know, putting some pawns all in your kitchen and everything. So we do see pawn taking d5, pawn taking d5, and then we do see d4 now. Now, this was the point that we came to where after this game, you know, Hikaru Nakamura decided he was going to go a rook over to c1 and then knight to a4. And just kind of put a little attack on this c5 pawn. And then we got into some, you know, typical type of stuff. But it's a little different this game. We got d4, knight c6, bishop to e2. Knight comes down to e4. And you see that it actually starts to heat up pretty, you know, a lot on this queen side over here. Because now we got knight to e4 coming. So that's putting some pressure on c3. And you see it starts to continuously build. So we got pawn taking c5. And then bishop comes down to f6. There's some more pressure. We got rook over to c1 and then queen to a5. And it's like the ultimate pressure. So you do have the possibility of going, you know, queen to d4. But this knight actually can start to kind of knock it around. And also, you do have bishop coming to f5 at some point. You know, possibly kind of x-raying through this knight. So you want to be a little bit careful. So we choose knight to d4. It's definitely like the best option. And you just kind of plug up that diagonal. We got knight taking c5, knight taking c6, pawn taking c6. You got castles. And then knight does go back to e4. We got queen up to c2. And then we see a bunch of trades on c3. Bishop takes, knight takes, queen takes. And queen definitely has the ability to take on c3. It's just a little bit more accurate to take on a2, which is what Wesley So does. And then we actually see the novelty of the game, and that is bishop to f3. Now, in this position, there's 7 games in the database, and every single one of them has rook to c2, which is a very, like, logical move. I mean, you know, it's like absolutely one of the best moves in the position. But, you know, Hikaru Nakamura just says, bro, I'm going to try to like switch it up just a little bit and kind of cause, you know, you always want to try to like surprise your opponent some kind of way. So, you know, like I said, bishop to f3 is trying to do that. And there's many ways that Wesley So can go about playing. You know, he chooses to go ahead and go back to a6 with the queen. And then we just pretty much get into, you know, some more trades. Queen takes c6, queen takes c6, rook takes c6. And then we do have bishop to e6. Now, you do have to play kind of specifically if you're black, because, I mean, right now, you do have this pawn hit. And then more importantly, behind that pawn and this rook, you do have your rook hit. So you kind of have to play a nice, you know, some nice dynamic moves. So like I said, bishop does come to e6. We got rook over to d1. We got rook a to b8. And we actually see the move rook to c7. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, like, can I win a pawn? You actually can get a pawn. Black is going to get a pawn back, so you're going to be pretty much even. But, you know, you just have to make for sure that you don't put yourself in any kind of pins and make sure you're not getting back rank mated. As long as you're not doing any of that, then you're good to go ahead and grab pawn. So if you did go bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5, rook takes b5, like I said, rook takes d5. Like I said, the pawn is going to get taken too, so rook takes b3, and then you have just enough time to make sure you're not back rank mated. But don't go in and start doing trades and taking pieces, and then you're like, oh, I'm getting mated. Like, don't do that. We've all done it though, so don't feel bad if you do that. Like I said, rook a came to b8. We got rook to c7. Rook takes b3. Rook takes a7. So you see that, I mean, both players have gone tit for tat so far. You know, we had kind of like some craziness going on the queen side with that, you know, c3 area. But I mean, you know, we kind of gone tit for tat since then. So rook f goes to b8. We got rook a to a1. Rook 3 goes to b5. You don't say that all the time. We got the move h4. Not only is this giving the king some lift, so now we don't have any back rank issues. Black actually still does. But we are preparing to bring our king into the game via h2, g3. So we got g6. We got king to h2, king to g7, king goes to g3, king to f6. And then we have a rook up to a6. Why not pin the bishop? You never know. We do see rook 8 to b6. We got rook takes b6, rook takes b6. We got bishop taking d5. So now we snap that pawn off. Bishop takes, rook takes. We got the move h5. We got rook down to d2. We got the rook down to b4. We got f3. Rook goes to a4. We got e4. We're trying to like give our king some more progress going into the center of the board. So e4 is just making sure that we, you know, block any checks that might come up. So rook does go to a1. We got king to f4. We got rook over to h1. Now, like, both players, I mean, it's basically pretty even. I mean, when you have rook in games, especially when you have all the pawns on one side of the board, you know, being up a pawn is still pretty drawn. I mean, it's a lot easier to hold those types of in games. You know, like I said, with that type of stuff. So, you know, basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to tie down your opponent's king as much as possible, so their pawn structure, and you're just trying to pick at any little weakness. So that's why you see Wesley So go down and come around to try to grab, you know, whatever he can try to do. And so that's why you see him go down and go to rook to h1. You know, he's kind of hitting this little point right here, asking Hikaru, like, what do you want to do? So he decides to defend with g3. We got rook over to g1. We got e5 with check. King goes to g7. Rook goes up to d7. And you got to be a little bit careful because, I mean, because this pawn is pinned to the king, you do have the ability to push this pawn. So that's why you see Wesley So come and go rook to e1. We got rook over to a7. Now, explaining one thing in this particular situation, what you see from these players whenever they are making their rook movements, maybe some of you guys might be wondering, like, why are they moving so far away? Well, what we call that is checking distance. So basically, I don't know if you guys have played certain games, but you have situations where, you know, you'll start checking your opponent's king, and then the king starts walking towards your rook, and then next thing you know, it's like touching your rook, and you're like, man, like, this is kind of annoying. So basically what they're doing with their rooks is they're moving their rooks as far away as possible. So if they do start to check, they don't have to worry about the king getting anywhere close because, you know, the king can only go one square at a time. So that's why you're seeing these types of rook movements. So rook goes to a7. We see rook up to e2. Rook goes down to a3. We see rook down to e1. Just making sure that we can't do that little tactic. The rook goes to a5. We got rook up to e2, rook to a6, rook to e1. Rook down to a4, rook to e2, and then we have a rook over to e4. And I thought this was a really good opportunity to do a pause the video right here because this is actually a pretty important point that we're at right now. So this would be, you know, a good guess the move opportunity. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video, I have a question on a specific move. If Wesley So captures Hikaru Nakamura's rook on e4 and they trade rooks, right? Would that be a good move? If you want to go ahead and pause the video and, you know, try to figure out if that's a good move for black to play, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So, for those of you that said it was a good move, it's actually a huge blunder, unfortunately. I'll explain exactly why. For those of you that said that it wasn't a good move, then you have avoided death, literally. So going into the situation right here, if you do take rook takes e4, king takes e4, you see the bar goes super crazy. But it's not like insanely obvious as to why the bar is going crazy. Like, why is it so crazy one for white? Well, this is the main thing that you had to consider before you went into a trade. White is up a pawn. So black is trying to create a trade to use their superior material to just win the game. And in this particular position, it's very, very easy for white to just go ahead and go through and just win the game. So it really doesn't matter what black does. You are going to start pushing your pawn. So like the most important issue in this situation for black is pushing, your pawn to f4 and f5 and trying to break down this pawn structure right here, or force black to trade, and then it gets the king into a much better position. So the only really thing that black can do, because you can see that black can't really push any pawns right here because it just loses them, right? Is probably try to come up this way type situation, just kind of camp out on e6. But I mean, if we did start to kind of see that, you would see the plan that I'm talking about go in motion. So you'd see king to f8, probably see the move f4, king going to e7, f5, and then you have really two options. I'll get into the other one in a second. If you just go ahead and just say, I'm going to capture this immediately, pawn takes f5, king takes f5, you basically have accomplished what you want. I mean, you're going to be coming over here and scooping up this pawn over here. And I mean, you just have superior material compared to black. If you got into this position right here after f5 and you said, hey, man, I don't want to capture, I'm going to try to resist as much as possible. And you get in a situation where you just move the king back. Well, you get into a somewhat similar situation. Pawn takes g6, pawn takes g6. You got king up to d5. And this particular situation had like a really interesting checkmate. And I've actually done this to somebody like on purpose. I was like, this is going to be a cool way to checkmate. But you would probably see king to e7. And normally in these types of endgames, when you have a king and a pawn versus a king, you have to be very careful not to stalemate your opponent. In this particular situation, your opponent has extra moves that it can play, so you don't have to worry about that. So if we push e6, king going back to e8, king up to d6, like the typical, checkmate type of stuff, right? Or, pawn promotion type stuff, but going into stalemate. King over to d8, e7 with check, king going over to e8, and then, of course, if these pawns weren't over here on the king side, this would just be stalemate, right? But black does have moves that they can make. They have the ability to move this pawn after you capture here. They have the ability to move this pawn. So I'll show you what that looks like in motion. So g5, pawn taking g5, and then the move h4 can come. And it's very important that you do not take this h4 pawn, because if you take this h4 pawn, it's a stalemate. So you allow the h pawn to continue to move. So g6, we got h3, g7, h2, and then we have this really nice looking checkmate. So that's all. Those are the major differences between taking on e4 and not taking on e4. So getting back to the game, Wesley so decided, hey, I don't need to be trading correctly, and he went rook to a2. We got rook down to e1, rook up to a4 check. So we see some checks. We see some trying to tie some situations down. The king goes to e3, rook to a3 with check, king to f2, king going back to f8. We got rook up to e3, we got rook up to a5, we got f4. King goes down to e7, we got rook over to b3, rook to a1, we got rook to b7 with check, king down to e6. Rook to b6 with check, king to e7, we got f5, rook to a2 with check, king goes up to f3, rook to a3, king goes up to f4, rook to a4 with check. You see that Wesley so, and this is something you have to think about, you have to be checking the crap out of the king. And like I was telling you guys before, that's why you see the rooks going all the way on the other side of the board, because look at this really nice distance between these two pieces, right? King goes to g5. We see rook to g4 with check. The king goes all the way up to h6. Pawn takes f5. Rook goes over to f6. The rook takes on g3. Rook takes f5. We got king to e6. Rook goes to f6 with check. King takes e5. Rook takes f7. King goes to e6. Rook to a7, giving that distance again. The king goes to f6. We got king taking h5, which might look kind of promising because you're like, hey, man, I got a pass pawn. But it is a rook pawn. That's the major situation that you're in. We do see rook up to g8. We got rook over to h7. Rook to g2. We got rook to h6 with check. We got king to f7. And then we have a really cute move by Hikaru Nakamura, and that is rook to g6. This is going to force a stalemate after rook takes g6. Now, it was completely drawn anyway, but this is like a, a non-boring way to finish the game. So it is in this position that the players are drawn by stalemate. So that is that game. And this is one of the games that extended everything out a little bit further. So that is that. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by, and I'll see you guys next time.